Well, it was game time today. I'm standing in front of Victoria's Supreme Court. Why? Because today was the Democracy Fund's Vaccine Passport Challenge for British Columbia. That is the challenge that our Rebel News supporters graciously donated to make happen. I'm going to give you a recap on what took place on day one. As I'm standing here, it is May 10th. This is a 2-day hearing. So it will be on tomorrow as well. And we're going to catch up with one of the three plaintiffs, Lee Eliason, about how she feels about what went down in court today. Drea Humphrey here with Rebel News, standing next to the brave and strong, and hopefully you will be free of the discrimination you face from vaccine passports. Now, you, like us, took the ferry. You came with your husband to be here in court today, long awaited after 7 months of being segregated and discriminated because you medically cannot get the vaccine passport. How are you feeling walking out of the courthouse?
Well, like you said, medically, I medically feel very happy that I'm here because, the last couple of weeks I wasn't feeling very well, and I was in bed a lot. And I thought, I hope I'm better for the big day so that I can go. And I just rested up the last couple of weeks, and I'm happy to say that I'm here. And I hope to see, an end to this that includes never having to endure a winter in isolation, complete isolation again, like that, segregated. I hope that that's something that I can put behind me.
Well, that reminds me of something that one of your amazing lawyers, William Cates from JSS Barrister, both Cates as well as Mr. Robert Hawkes flew from Alberta to be here today to fight for your medical freedom and other British Columbians. But one of the things Cates pointed out is, yes, the vaccine passports are dropped, but the three plaintiffs are living in fear that they will return. Do you agree with that statement?
Oh, definitely. I think we've learned that there's no telling what may happen. I mean, even over the winter, there was an end date that was initially given to the passport system when it was put in the fall. And I thought, okay, it's going to end. It had an end date. And then when they extended it, really, I don't mind saying I cried because I was so upset because here you are counting down for something and then it's further in the distance again. And so I think we've all been able to see how just unpredictable this entire thing has been, and we just don't know what's coming. And of course, my fear is winter will roll around, and cases or variant or something happens, and we're back to where we were before, and I'm back to where I was before, at home, possibly away from my family. And I just hope that I do not have to go through that again.
Well, we'll have to wait to see what happens from this case. This is the second case that challenged the vaccine passport in British Columbia. You can find the details on the first case, which took place on April 19th and 20th. From what I could see, I was the only reporter at the time, I haven't looked in the last week or so, who reported on such an important case. And both of those cases sort of challenged the vaccine passport and the strict exemption regime, which started off with 0 medical exemptions for people like Lee. Lee's story is also linked below, and you have rare illnesses that prevent you from being able to take the vaccine. Then there were other plaintiffs like Mr. Prendeville, who has one of the recognized, even the government says, yes, this is one of the categories of adverse reactions, which is pericarditis, the swelling, inflammation of the sac around the heart. Now, one of the things that Mr. Cates also brilliantly brought up is that, so even though once he had this exemption, British Columbia didn't make any changes to the QR code to allow people like yourself or him that had that paper saying Bonnie Henry says that I'm exempt to be able to just peacefully walk into a place and scan the code, even though they did make an exception when the government decided that children with only one vaccine would be able to get into events. What was something else that stood out for you today in court?
Well, it was just, even with that, I thought just because the government lawyers are saying something existed, meaning that there was exemptions, just because you say, they say existed, but in the form it existed in, is it useful? That's the question. Is it it's not useful. You can tell me I can get an exemption all you want to tell me, but here I am months and months. The whole time, months later, that I've been trying to seek a recognized exemption, and I would think and hope that I'd have one by now if that was something that was obtainable, considering I've got lawyers and my doctor, and we're standing in front of the Supreme Court. So if it was something that was just accessible, wouldn't I have it by now?
Well, that's another thing that was definitely brought up in court today. Also very similar to what was brought up in the first case brought on by the Canadian Constitution Foundation, which just how difficult it was for doctors to be brave enough to write an exemption when one is warranted, and B, figure out how to. So that was kind of your situation. Now, I'm going to rant for just a little bit here, so bear with me. One thing I thought was very strange, almost hypocritical possibly, was that in the first case of a similar challenge, like I just mentioned, Chief Justice Hinkson, who's ruling over all of these 4 cases that are coming up, he really emphasized and questioned the council there about why the council hadn't provided an affidavit from a doctor stating that they had fear about writing medical exemptions. Instead, it was just the plaintiff saying, my doctor was scared to write an exemption. In your case, you have this hero of a doctor, and I know that because I've done so many reports on the other side of the story with COVID-19. That type of fear is a real thing. Who eventually signed an affidavit and said, yes, part of the struggle, even though he did advocate and say, medically you shouldn't get it, part of the struggle was the fear of what would happen to me if I wrote that medical exemption. And then Justice Hinkson is like, well, what kind of doctor is too afraid to write a medical exemption? And I'm like, you got the affidavit you wanted. But yeah, there was a lot to unpack there. There's going to be more written info below. I assume Justice Hinkson is going to preside over all, or wait to hear all of the matters before he makes a judgment. Like I said, there's been 2 already. We have an interview coming up with you with a gentleman who is representing himself in the 3rd case. It's a bit of a broader case. And there is also the organization which is challenging some of the vaccine mandates as well. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing that Chief Justice Hinkson is going to listen to all of the cases together. But what I do know is that Rebel News will be bringing you the reports you can trust on what actually takes place in court today. Any final words? What do you want to say to the people who made this day happen for you?
I just want to once again say thank you. Being here today, I am so grateful, and I don't take a second of it for granted. Like I said, I didn't even know if I was physically going to be able to get here. And just fighting for this, it's given me hope through what was a very, very trying time. And so the whole time I've just been thinking about today's the day that I get to be heard. I get to hear my voice heard, and I just hope that I hope for a good outcome.
Well, don't we all? This is just one of around 20 vaccine-related cases that we have helped the Democracy Fund take on by your generous donations at fightvaccinepassport.com. Please continue to donate there to keep those cases going strong. I'm Drea Humphrey with Rebel News, and this is Lee Eliason. The Democracy Fund spent thousands of dollars to make sure this important fight for medical freedom in Canada took place. But none of that would be possible if generous donors like yourself are not continuing to donate at fightvaccinepassports.com. Like I said, there's many other vaccine-related cases that the Democracy Fund is still taking on, and we need all the help that we can get to make those continue to go strong. So please continue to donate what you can at fightvaccinepassports.com. Let's set a new precedent so that medical discrimination isn't the norm here. Not a penny goes to Rebel News. It all goes to cover the legal fees and expenses for important cases, just like what you just learned about today.